Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Midweek Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're streaming out live on YouTube, Rumble, also on X, Facebook Live, BitChute, and also later on the audio streams. If you're with us on iTunes and Spotify, we'll be there on all the major audio podcasting platforms as well. Thank you for joining us. Now, last week, we spoke to one of the crew members in the Global Sumud Flotilla, Yara Madarelli, and she gave us her firsthand eyewitness account of what happened to her and just what it was like, the experience on the Gaza flotilla. Now, a lot has developed geopolitically since then, including the situation in Gaza and what's to become of this ceasefire that we currently have. We'll talk about that and more, as well as hear his story. Frank Romano, Dr. Frank Romano, who's been on the program previously. He has also been released from Israeli captivity. To our knowledge, he is safe and sort of at home, as it were, in Europe. We're going to speak to him about his experience. Also look at some video footage he's provided for us as well. So we're really looking forward to this conversation. So we're going to be talking about what happened with the flotilla, but also what's happening in Gaza afterwards. Let me bring him onto the stage right now and see if we've got him on the live link. Here he is, Dr. Frank Romano. Frank, thank you so much for joining us on the Midweek Wire.
Great to be back, Patrick.
No, it's great to see you in good health and in good spirits. We've seen your comrades and colleagues as well. Some of them have been posting and doing interviews, and it's quite an extraordinary, it's an unprecedented situation, Frank. You were early on with the single boats trying to break the siege, and this was just really accelerated the effort. I mean, it really amplified it. It grew 20x with the Global Sumud Flotilla. You guys made a big splash in terms of media. I was blown away. The mainstream media were covering after the drone attacks on some of your boats. I was shocked, and I just thought, okay, we're in a different space here. And from that point of view, you guys have done quite a great service to this issue right now. But without further ado, Frank, just tell us your story, about what happened with the previous boat, this effort, the journey to Gaza, and we'll go through some of the other details of that, as well as images you've showed us. But go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. I was actually on the Madeleine. I headed to Gaza from Catania, kicked off because the FFC had a rule you have to have two journalists, and I had to give up my place to a journalist begrudgingly. And then I went to start working on the gondola with the deal I had with the FFC. The next boat goes out, I got to be on it, and I'd like to have some responsibilities other than just following orders and leadership. And so they agreed, got on I went to Hondola. The Hondola was in Augusta. We're just an hour away from Catania, where the Madeleine had just launched. And there I'm with this boat, this former fishing boat. Nothing's done. There's no flag. There's no insurance. And we've been talking to the media, such as yourself, Patrick, and saying, look, the idea is to get through the People's Corridor, follow the Madeleine, and then break the siege along with the Madeleine, and then follow with more boats. And I looked at the gondola. I said, we've got several months of work here. The gondola was stuck in Augusta for over a year because we couldn't get a flag, couldn't get insurance. You have to have both to leave a port, or the boat stays at port forever. Finally got it, launched. And we were intercepted. We got very close to Gaza. We got so close to Gaza, within 50 nautical miles, Patrick, that we could even feel the amazing resistance and their love. And there were thousands of people on the beach waiting for us, and got intercepted. We were then taken to Ashdod, processed, and then imprisoned. And difficult. We were on a hunger strike and a water strike, and then released. But this time, well, let's take it in order. After I left, I was deported to New York. I wanted to be deported to Paris, but they insisted I go to New York. And finally got to Paris. I was pretty tired, I must say, after this. It was a tough voyage. I'd been on the gondola for 2 months before that, preparing it and everything, a month or so. So it was a real challenge. But I sent my application in for the Global Sumud Flotillaand, Patrick. No response. I mean, they apparently had tens of thousands of applications. It kind of got lost, in the shuffle. And then finally, a friend who was already there in Barcelona said, and he didn't. This is amazing. He didn't lecture me and say, "Look, Romano, come on, you've been talking about getting a whole bunch of boats following your boat, the Honda, and I'm the owner of it. And now where are you? You should be in Barcelona." He didn't do that. He just said, "Romano, just come." And so much between the lines. I went, I'll check it out. So I went to the airport in Paris. I had 2 tickets, one to Barcelona and one to California to see my 3 kids I haven't seen since Malta. And the Malta disaster where the conscience was bombed. I hadn't been home to the West Coast yet. That's another one of my homes with my kids. And I called them up and said, "Look, I've got to go to Barcelona. I got to check it out." I get there late at night. I'm tired. I'm still wondering, did I make a right decision? My kids were understanding, but it's late at night. I'm still burnt out a little bit from the gondola, and I get to the shore there with 20 boats lined up, and then they were having a meeting with Paco's in charge, and I saw people from the gondola, my friends. I said, "Hey, the energy's there. I forgot my fatigue and just went with it." And then we were off from Barcelona. It took a lot of preparation, and then we got from Barcelona when we were on our way to Tunis to join up with other boats. We're joining up with the boats from Tunisia, from Italy, and from Greece. When we get to Mallorca, we had some issues. So there were some people that it just wasn't working out, Patrick. We were really a nonviolent operation, and some people really got a little bit over the top, and we had to ask them to please leave the boat, and we had to discharge a few people at Mallorca, bring on supplies. Some people were sick. We had to discharge. We had to take them there. We were anchored out and take them in so they can go to a hospital. And then some people just said, after that first night from Barcelona, Patrick, it was high seas, big swells, and everyone was sick. Some people said, "No, I didn't sign up for this. I'm leaving." So after Mallorca, then we go to Tunis, and in the port of Tunis, Thiago, my very close friend, who is one of the heads of the steering committee, trying to calm down the crowds on the shore. There were 700, 800 people that showed up and only 200 spots on the boats, including the Tunis boats. So he was talking to them and trying to get things worked out. It started to rain, and then we're trying to go back on the boats. And what happened is the family in the Alma boat were bombed right in the harbor. And it was only about 100 yards away from my boat, and I was on a sailboat. And so we got that sorted out. I think it was all psychological warfare, Patrick. It was the ideas they were hopefully the Israeli authorities were hoping to stop us, or enough people would leave. We wouldn't have enough people to man the boats, and we would, for all intents and purposes, be stopped. But what it did, it made us more emboldened. It made us more motivated to keep going. We still lost a few boats. In fact, before that, we were in actually Bizerte. We lost a few. We went to Bizerte after Tunis. That's right. And we lost a few boats, a few captains for various reasons. But we got through it, and we took off. And then we met up with the boats from Tunisia, from Italy, from Greece. Again, we're the Barcelona contingent. We left first because we had the longest way to go. And so we got together, and then we got to Crete. Crete was the last place, Patrick, before we make the final swing, the final stage to Gaza, where we got supplies. More people had to leave. There were sick people that had to leave, and so forth. Finally, we were ready on the final trip, and then the captain for every boat brought everyone together and said, "Look, this is your last chance. From here on to Gaza, there's no stopping. And so you make your choice now because we can't take you anywhere. Hopefully you're not sick because we're moving right to Gaza." And then we launched to Gaza at that point.
Right. And you sent me the last video clip you sent us before the show. I'll put this up on screen now, but just to describe this, I think it's at night. It seems pretty dark out. But if I'm not mistaken, I can play that. Let's see if we have that video clip. Here it is.
This is Frank Romano and Victor. Hi. We're on the
Pelucho Decimo sailboat, part of the Global Sumud Flotillaand. We are arriving in port on our way to Gaza. We are on our way to Gaza. And we have a beautiful sunset over here. I will take your picture. We are again preparing to go through the People's Corridor that was opened by the Madeleine and the Handala, this time with a massive number of boats. This is what we endeavored to do. This was our fantasy, and it's coming true. And then we arrive in international waters, and we will be all together, a massive fleet from Barcelona, from Tunis, from Italy, to break the siege together, God willing. Bring important humanitarian aid to the suffering Gazan people subject to this atrocious genocide that's going on and on and on. And this is not the end. This is the beginning. We are not going to give up. We'll be back again, back again, back again until Israel, aided by the United States, withdraws and allows the Palestinians to live a normal life, to be able to raise their children in some type of peace and have their own country, God willing. We are trying to help the Palestinians free themselves, and the Palestinians are trying to help us free ourselves. Thank you.
So that would have been around sunset, Frank, and you're sort of looks like leaving Crete and heading south into near Israeli controlled waters. I don't want to say territory because it's not officially theirs, but yeah, I mean, so that was the Spectre. That was the name of the boat you were on, right?
No, actually, this clip, and again, maybe we can do an updated interview, and I can bring in when we did our last stage, because I just didn't have enough time to find those videos. That actually was a Paluxo Decimo sailboat, and it was from Barcelona. We just got over very tough seas, and you can see those small boats take every wave seriously. And no, we're actually on our way to Tunis. We said we're on our way to Gaza because we were not allowed at the time, because I put that, I think, on social media. We're not allowed to tell people where we're headed. Yeah. So I just said we're headed to Gaza. But I can get you other videos. But that, you could see that, I'm part of the crew. You're absolutely right, Patrick. I actually helped steer the boat, and there's photos. I think you saw that photo. We showed the photo before where a lady was steering, and I was there helping watch. And then I took her place and steered. That was tough. But then the Spectre that you alluded to, for some reason, I think it was, yeah, I know why. The captain of the Calypso, that sailboat we just saw, said that we don't have autopilot. And I said, no problem. We'll just do 24/7 steering, and we'll just have to have more than 5 people. I had 5 people going from Barcelona to Tunis, so it was 24/7. We all had to steer about 8 hours, 9 hours a day. It was tough, but just added 2 or 3 more people in the crew. But he didn't want to do it, and there was a motor problem. So the Paluxo that you saw there, that sailboat, ended up staying in Bizerte, and Thiago fortunately got me on the Spectre, which is a much bigger boat and was a motorboat. So and I did offer to learn how to steer, as I'd done the Hondola. The Hondola, I steered, the boat that was went to Gaza about a month before that and was intercepted. I piloted the boat about 8 hours a day with the radar and so forth. This time, I trained on the Spectre, and I do have other photos. I just could not find them in this short period of time. And it was great because I had more time to talk with people like you, Patrick, with the media. As I've said, I totally sincerely believe this type of a mission, 50% of it is media. Without the media, we go nowhere. So yes, it took a bit of organization and motivation. It's nothing about heroism. We know it's an obligation to do this, to help people who are suffering. And we're vehicles. We're showcasing the struggle of the Palestinian people, but without the media to show the world and maybe have an influence on public opinion. As you said, mainstream news really did, especially after we were bombed, a couple of times we were bombed, separate days, picked up the stories. It doesn't matter. I know they're looking for, something dangerous and so forth to show the people. Doesn't matter. But the word got out, and I think more people that have been on the fence, Patrick, about supporting Palestine in this struggle and getting away from that frigid view of what we're doing is anti-Semitic, what we're doing is against all Jews, and get away from the reality of it. The Jewish government is committing a genocide, and the media helped us do that, and it was a breakthrough. You're right. And the biggest breakthrough really was not, well, we were intercepted. We almost got there, and there were 44 boats. But the biggest breakthrough is more people got the word thanks to the media.
Yep. No, absolutely. Here's another video we'll play as well. This, I think it was from a little bit later, and we'll bring this up on screen and listen to this.
Hello, here we are. Getting ready. We're putting all the boats together to start the last leg of our journey to Gaza. Here we are outside of Crete Islands. You see all the boats. We are towing a boat. It's like an old fishing vessel that perhaps the motor's not working. Anyway, we are waiting for the final decision to group together the boats from Barcelona, Tunisia, Italy, and Greece, and finally head on our last leg to Gaza. It should take about 5 to 6 days. God willing. You see all the boats there in the cove over there. And we are very, very upbeat. We want to send a message to the Gazan people, to the Gazan Palestinians. We're on our way. You have not been forgotten. We're going to open up the People's Corridor. Then we're going to break the siege, inspiring other activists to follow us. So in other words, we're not giving up on this. We'll have massive number of boats by sea, and then hopefully a massive number of people continuing the March to Gaza movement in coordination eventually until Israel has to withdraw from Gaza with its aider and abettor United States, war criminals, and from the West Bank, and we can help Palestine to free itself. And as I've said a million times before, Palestine has led the way to the world to show we can resist this military-industrial complex. We can resist this money powers that control the entire world today, either directly or with respect, or indirectly with respect to Russia and China. They, anytime any country that doesn't agree with the United States or Israel does something different, they're subject to sanctions. But we are saying we're going to free ourselves from the claws of this military-industrial complex, money interests that control us, this oligarchy, this stifling, vicious, evil oligarchy that controls us, including that's really pushing to exterminate the Gazan Palestinians. We will free ourselves from that, God willing.
Right, Frank, there we are. Now, it was great because of the connections. I know some of people had Starlink connections and other satellite internet, but you were able to get us video clips, which we then disseminated on the different news programs. So that worked. That was really good. And just getting a sense of what was going on there. So how was that last leg? There must have been some apprehension, because at the end of the day, you've been through this before, Frank, but you don't know for certain how it's going to end up. What was that like for everybody?
Now, first of all, and you alluded to it, I was on the Spectre, not on the sailboat. I was on the motorboat, and I should have identified it. But right after I spoke that night, we were bombed again. And this time, it wasn't just the Alma and the family boat. The Spectre, my boat, was also bombed. There was a huge explosion next to it, and there were these loud bangs up on top deck. And some of the members of the crew went up and they realized they were kind of fuming. They looked like gas bombs of some type, and they covered them and threw them off deck. It turned out that they were hydrogen sulfide bombs that if you get a little whiff of it, it can really, trigger lots of allergic reactions in your nose and your mouth and your lungs. If you get a big whiff of it, it can cause cardiac arrest and it can kill you. So they threw it off deck, and also the Alma and the family, I think, were bombed again in 2 other boats. I think 1 or 2 boats were incapacitated after that bombing. And that after that bombing in Crete, that's when Italy went ballistic, and the whole country. And finally, the Italian government then sent a boat. The Spanish government sent 2 boats to quote unquote protect us. The Greek government, because we're outside of Crete right now, sent a boat to protect us in Greek waters, not in international waters. And the Turkish boat also was sent, and it provided drones to cover above, so it hopefully would deter other drones from bombing us. So here we are now on the last leg. And then we hear, and this was unsettling, it's something to be taken seriously. Ben Gvir gets over the air and says, we are going to treat Global Sumud Flotilla activists like terrorists. And you take that seriously, because it's already tough to be in jail in Israel, already, especially when we're in prison. The processing is the processing, but we figured we know how the Palestinians are treated. All of them, whether terrorists or not, are all considered terrorists, and they're tortured, and they're given longer prison sentences. So I expected anything. In fact, when I was in prison just a month earlier, the prison officials, the agents from the Israeli government warned me, said, this is going to be your 3rd, if you come back a 3rd time, because I've been in jail before. I already was subject to a 10-year ban when I was on the gondola going into Gazan waters. This time they said a 3rd time will give you a minimum 3-year sentence. So I was thinking, well, are they going to apply? They lie a lot and they try to intimidate. I didn't believe it, but I'm maybe calling their bluff now. Now I'm calling their bluff. So we arrive. So international waters. But I'll tell you what, Patrick. Anytime we get into international waters, I don't know if you can guess why I'm extremely relieved not to be under the jurisdiction of any country. I don't know if you know why, but I remember we had problems getting the gondola out of Augusta. You have to have a flag, you have to have insurance, and you have to have a port authority authorization. And I remember several years ago, there were 5 Freedom Flotilla vessel boats that were stopped in Greece. And the Israeli officials, I think, paid a lot of money to the Greek government to stop the boats, and they were stopped indefinitely. They could not go on to Gaza, and I'm always afraid, be in jurisdiction of any state, that for one reason or another, we won't be allowed to leave. And once we're in international waters, they theoretically cannot touch us. And then, of course, we have other challenges. Now we're on our way to Gaza. Now we're on our way to the Orange Zone. And they called the Orange Zone is the farthest distance away from Gaza where Israeli commandos have intercepted boats, and that's about 120 nautical miles from the shores of Gaza. So we get into the Orange Zone, and then, well, I didn't expect any boats even to accompany us, Patrick, but all the boats left at that point, saying, well, we cannot accompany you into the Orange Zone and can't into Gaza. Now, it's completely their international law obligation to do so under the International Court of Justice decision. We can talk about the legal stuff later, but they didn't. I was hoping they would, but at least we did. We never expected any boats to accompany us or even to try to protect us. At least that was one step, and maybe subsequently we'll have more of these boats, and perhaps they will realize that their obligation is to take us all the way to Gaza to help us unload humanitarian aid. But now we're thinking, Patrick, is sort of in line with your question. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Some people are telling me turn back. People are saying turn back. This is a war zone now. There are 44 boats. Do you think they're going to take the time that they did with the Madeleine, the Hondola, and they're going to come by with the Zodiacs? They're going to intercept, and then they're going to accompany you to Ashdod and then process you? they might bomb you. It's just too much, and you're in a war zone now, and you're all accused of being terrorists. You're all accused. All accused of being terrorists. So they might feel justified. They might be a little frantic, and when they're a little bit desperate, bad decisions are made, and then after that, after boats are sunk, people are killed. It's like, sorry, we made a mistake. We've heard that one before, especially when it comes to victims of the Israeli and American armed forces and others. So all these contingencies are floating through our minds. But you know what, Patrick? We stayed upbeat. We sang together. We prayed together. We helped each other out. When some of us were sick, we helped each other. We medicated each other. And we were so united. It was amazing that actually, I don't think we were too worried. We just felt, well, we're together. We're in this together. And we didn't think about us so much, Patrick, because really, again, we're vehicles. We're thinking about, well, whatever we go through here is nothing to compare to what the Palestinians go through. And it's a necessary risk to bring the world's attention to this genocide. And hopefully we will, and hopefully we'll get in. But it was already a success even before we got into 15 nautical miles because, as you said, there was huge media attention. And for me, it's not the glory of it. It's just more showcasing the Palestinian struggle means more people will be informed and more possibilities that public opinion will shift, especially countries like the United States and France that are funneling unlimited arms to Israel, and maybe people will pressure their government to stop aiding and abetting a war criminal, which makes them accomplices through media attention. So it was already a success even before we got into the 50 nautical mile place where the Spectre, we were intercepted then.
Yeah, and it goes without saying that Israel doesn't recognize international law, maritime law. It doesn't apply to them at all, and there's nobody willing to hold them to account. Least of all the United States. It's just not going to happen. And they've subjugated Europe to such a degree that everyone's just terrified. I mean, they could have gone out and just bombed all of your boats and then make some statement that Hamas had put weapons on board, and then there would be no debate about it. But so now we're getting closer to Gaza here, and let me just bring this up on screen as well. And there's some of your cohort there. I mean, Greta Thunberg also brought a lot of attention to this in the West. I mean, just her presence alone had a kind of a transformative effect on the media coverage, in that the media had to report, because if anything happened to her, that's a big story. So they didn't want to be caught unawares on that. So that was important. There are some other people from other countries that got international coverage as well. You see Tiago Avila and Rima Hassan and others. The Irish comedian Tag Hickey got a lot of coverage from the Irish side as well. But I mean, on the whole, Frank, the Western media would like this thing just to disappear. I mean, it's not something that they want to have to deal with here. And I think here's one of your crew members here. This
Right.
photo who is this person you're with?
Yeah, this is what's her name? She's like she was on the boat from Barcelona. That's the sailboat, and it was her turn to pilot it. And I wish I could remember her name. And she was actually got off the boat in Mallorca and then got on, I guess, in Tunisia on a different boat. And all of a sudden that boat didn't go, so she actually ended up going home. She never got all the way to Gaza. But anyway, I think, yeah, her name is Katie. Her name is Katie. Last name I don't remember. Now here we're on the Spectre. We are actually, I'm not sure if this is, no, we're actually training. There wouldn't be a hands up and all that, any smiles. We're training. It's not interception, but when interception happened, it would look like this. We have our life preservers on. We'd have our hands up. We were just doing some training here, in between training actually. And you can see me on the upper left corner, and then on the right hand there, his name is Chris. He's a senator from Ireland. So he was a cool guy. He got off the boat, however, before he got to Gaza because his daughter was ill. So he had to return to Ireland in an emergency to be with his daughter who was sick in the hospital, very young baby actually. So there we are on the Spectre preparing, training. We trained every day. And we're training for the commando. So this is sort of the answer to your question between Crete, where we really was on a final leg, we were training very seriously for the interception by the Shayatit 13 commandos. And they are like the Navy SEALs, but I think they have another edge. They're really trained even more to kill, to execute, really, even more, I think, than the SEALs and the Green Berets. They were the ones, you might have heard that Shati Hospital in Gaza, there was a problem a couple of years ago. They brought in this commando. This commando is specialized to intercept boats. They're tough, and they're basically killers. They sent them to the hospital in Gaza to clean it up because they just could not get in and see what. They cleaned it up all right. They killed babies in cribs. They buried people alive. They killed women and children. They massacred people at this hospital. They're infamous. So we really were careful. We threw our phones out before they arrived and our computers. Basically, you don't want them to confiscate data, but especially if we raise up a computer or a phone, it will look like an arm and they will simply execute you. Yep. And no, we train not to make any violent gestures. That's why when some people were over the top earlier on and we saw that they're not reacting during training peacefully, that we had to ask them to leave, because not only would they compromise their security, they'd compromise all our security, because they could literally spray us with bullets easily if someone had done anything that looked like that they're targeting any members of this commando with an arm of any kind. So so here we are then on the last leg, and we were upbeat again. We were thinking all these possible scenarios and prepared for them all. But what we've done differently, though, Patrick, in our training was from Tunis, from the moment we were bombed by those drones, the Alma and the family, and incidentally, Greta and Thiago were on the family, but we had to abandon the family. And I still don't know to this day. There was a motor issue, but I'm not sure if part of it was destroyed because it was attacked twice, once in Crete, once in Tunis. If part of the attack incapacitated the boat, they had to change and we had to leave the boat there, and they went on the Alma boat. To sort of get to your question about what things we did, is from Tunis on, we not only trained for this commando, like you see in the picture, but we also trained for a drone attack, and that's a different type of training. We had to go to a different part of the boat. We had to do different things, be in different position, especially be in a place where there's a roof over our head, not on top deck or anything. So we had to change our training because of the drone attacks.
Yeah, and each boat's different. Different protocol for each boat, and depending on how many crew you have to take all of these things into consideration. And well, we'll get to the political side momentarily as we come to wrap up this segment, Frank. But before we get to the political side and what's happening now in Gaza, we have a clip, and it's extremely unsavory individual by the name of Ben-Gvir. And he was lording all over social media and the media, as you said, Frank, oh, these are terrorists, making threats. He's going to throw them into the terrorist gulags in the Negev desert, which he did. But then he still had, your unarmed humanitarian activist, he still had to show up and troll you in prison. And I think it's just the most extraordinary thing. I mean, who is this guy? So we've got this clip here, and we just have to share people. And I know you were present during some of this or during this. So, I mean, people have to see it. We did show this with our previous guest, Iyad Madarelli, but we have to show it again because I want to hear your side of this story, Frank. But here is the brave and powerful Ben-Gvir. I mean, a real, a giant among little men, but here he is.
תומכי רוצחים, אגב, האוניות שלהם נמצאו קרחנה שלמה. הם לא באו באמת, לא למחאת, לא לעזור, אלא הם באו בעד עזה, בעד הטרוריסטים. אלה טרוריסטים. הם תומכי טרור. מה זה פה?
Okay, so Frank, what's interesting about that clip was at that moment, all of you guys started shouting expletives at him, apparently. and he edited that out of all his social media posts. Isn't that amazing? This guy with this clout can't handle, doesn't want people to hear what actually happened. I found that to be amazing. What was that like?
Well, you see people on the floor there. As soon as they were taken out of the boats, the Shatit 13 commanders, they handed us to police, and they put us on the floor. But you didn't see the first. We're outside in the hot sun, basically, and crouching over. They put us in this awful position at first, and it was almost like torture. And some people, I stayed for 45 minutes, so they picked me up and took me to the processing center in Ashdod, and others as much as 3 hours. This particular incident, however, I wasn't actually there in this particular. I was. This was just the beginning. He met us. This is at Ashdod, where the processing center is, where they unloaded the boats and took us. I was going to get to it. The Shiite commandos handed us over to the police. Then their job was done. But as soon as the police got out with from camera range, they started hitting us, dragging us, putting our hands behind our back. And one of my friends, who's very nice, I know he didn't provoke anything, they broke or sprained his arm, because when I saw him next, he was in prison, the Shiite, the prison in Negev, and we were in a cage together. Now here's the next stage with Ben Gvir, and I don't think you have footage from there. But Ben Gvir, we were in a cage. Now they put us all in a cage and we stayed there maybe an hour or two. There wasn't enough seating for people, so people were standing, some people were seated, some people were laying on the ground. It was just so tight, and there were all the male people of the Global Sumud Flotillaand were in that cage. And guess what? We heard no processing had started. We were just waiting around like animals in a cage. And then all of a sudden we saw a brouhaha coming toward us. There were a lot of people, and all of a sudden we saw that butterball, Ben Gvir, raise his vicious head and yell out, "Ah, they're the terrorists!" And he was not well received there. We ranted and we said, "Vive, vive Palestine! Get away, Gvir! You're a dictator! You're the terrorist!" So we were yelling at him as he walked by, and I thought that was pretty gutsy, because the guards were tough and they might take it out on us. But at that point, he walked by. And we're in the Negev desert. We're about 2 hours away from Jerusalem, 2 or 3 hours away from Jerusalem. He took his time to get out there to also intimidate us, but we weren't intimidated by him or anything. And then after he left, then the processing started. So we didn't receive him well there. But the difference between the Hondulla, leaving the Hondulla and being transferred by this commando group to the police, we were transferred to the police after the Hondulla, and the Madeleine was the same, and then we were taken to the processing center. This time, when the police got a hold of us, as I said before, let me just expound upon it, Patrick. They were really rough with us. They grabbed us, they pulled us, and they put our arm behind our back, and literally injured some of us. And then they put us on the ground, and we were in line on the ground, like you see those people in that room there. And again, that was probably in Ashdod, but I didn't look like it was outside, but we were outside on the hot ground, bent over with our head on the hot ground and our knees touching the hot ground, just burning our bodies. And again, I was there for 45 minutes, and I thought I was going to die. But I heard people were there for 3 hours. And finally, one by one, picked us up. Some of us dragged us up. Some of us put our arms behind our back again and hurt us as they were dragging us to the processing center. And then we were processed and interrogated over and over again, trying to get information from us, and then we were taken to prison. So that part where we were thrown on the ground and really manhandled by the police, I think was subsequent to orders of Ben Gvir to treat us like terrorists. And I think they treat the Palestinians even worse. I've heard they do that with Palestinians. They put them on the ground, put them in this very uncomfortable position for hours in this hot sun. They could keep them all day in the hot sun. And then they torture them, they hit them. In the Moscovia prison where I was, there's a torture chamber there, and I won't go into detail, but I think they were far worse treated, the Palestinians, than us. I think they wanted to give us a taste, and see they're executing Ben Gvir's orders. But once we started to be processed, then we were put in these, in these buses, very uncomfortable buses. Instead of being in a cage like it was in a Honduras with 2 or 3 people inside a van, we were actually in a regular bus, but it was a prison bus, very, very uncomfortable, and they took us 2 or 3 hours. It was a long trip from the Negev, and now we're in a high security prison, and that's where we were after the Global Sumud Flotilla people were arrested.
Yeah, and then Gavir made that infamous video he put out where he's marching up and down the prison hallway there saying, "We're going to put these terrorists in these cells." And then they put a picture of, they called it the new Gaza, and it was this hellscape photo which they made all of the prisoners look at while they passed it. As Yara said, there was a pool of blood on the ground below it. She was like, well, how did that get there? You can only imagine. But I mean, it's the level of the barbarity and just, rank unprofessionalism, and just what was your overall impressions with your interface? I know it's more than once this has happened to you, Frank, but we're told this is the most moral army in the world, the most professional. All of these platitudes about the IDF, they're just lionized in the American press. What's your impression of the organization and the people, the mindset?
Now, I think they recruit. I think with the Shayatet 13, the commandos that are arrested, I think they're just above normal, and they are pathologically violent people that they actually recruit for this commando position. But these commandos, I think, were informed that they better be careful with us. So we didn't get a lot of violence on the boat. We're talking about this vicious commandos that intercepted us, taking us 8 or 9 hours to Ashdod on our boat using their own pilot. We have 8 or 9 hours with them. But when we got to the police and then the guards, my God, we were treated like dogs, and we were barked at, we were manhandled, and unnecessarily, because most of us were, 99.9% of us were not resisting at all. And once we're in prison, now this part, and this is all part of the IDF, it's a prison, these are guards. And IDF are out there patrolling and definitely condone what's happening inside. But there was a man, for instance, his name was Paddy from Ireland, 80-year-old man, that wasn't getting insulin, and he could die without it. And they promised us, before they put us in a cell, we got to see a doctor. The doctor said, yes, we'll give you a medication. I'm taking kind of a medication, preventive stuff, and so we'll get it to you by daily. And it took us ranting and raving, yelling and screaming, and shaking the bars and pounding on the doors, because we're lined up, 15 cells lined up in face of another 15 cells. We actually see the cell in front of us, and we are chanting and yelling and screaming. And finally, the next day, they did bring in a doctor, and apparently the Patty was given insulin. But they promised us, other people did not get to see a doctor, and one person who got off the boat who didn't want to show his passport to the police, and they were grabbed, and he just didn't trust them. But they grabbed him, they beat him, and they put these, and they do it all the time. And they did it to me when I was in jail before the Honduras. They put handcuffs on you, and they tighten them so tight that you could see your hand turning black and blue, not getting off. Okay, then they tied his handcuffs so tight, because again, he didn't want to give them. He was protecting the passport. At the end of the day, they got the passport, but they wanted to punish him. They were so tight that he was bleeding. So he showed me the marks on his, on the wrist. It was just awful what they were doing. And then in jail, they pushed you and shoved you and yelled and screamed. Every 2 hours, they're yelling and screaming outside the door, opening the door, throwing people in, taking people out, shifting us around night and day. So it was difficult to get sleep. So there was that part of it. And when we did rant and rave for other people, I think there were 2 people. One, I think, was Hassan, the other Mohammed. They just took away because I think one of the windows was broken in the cell. So they put them in solitary. They didn't bring them back the next day. So we ranted and raved. Finally, they came back. But to punish all of us, they didn't give them breakfast. And it wasn't a problem for me because I was on a hunger strike. I think, at least half of us were on a hunger strike. But people, the older people and people that have a metabolism where they can't do a hunger strike we're being punished. And you know, all these punishments, all this treatment is clear violation of the Geneva Convention standards with respect to civilians, even combatants in prison. We're civilians and we're in a war zone for sure, but clear violations of the Geneva Convention. So we were being treated like dogs. But then at the end of the day, Patrick, I know Thiago and myself were interrogated separately by high-level government representatives. And now they're trying to get information. They get nothing because we give them what is public on public media and nothing more. But now I can go into it. But they asked me some stuff. It looked like the government was getting desperate and they needed a little bit of help. And they chose Thiago and myself to kind of interface between the Global Sumud Flotillaand people and the Israeli government. And I can go into it later.
Yeah. Well, look, we don't have a whole lot of time in this segment, but you could give us a very quick, condensed breakdown of that. We've got 5 minutes, and we're going to have to wrap up the live stream. But tell us about that in brief, if you would, Frank, and then let's just also I want to get your opinion on this. What is this ceasefire in your opinion that's currently going with Trump and Netanyahu? But I'll give you the floor. We've got 5 minutes, but on those 2 points, if you could give us your thoughts, that would be great, Frank. Go ahead.
Right, I'll wrap this up with the flotilla, and then I'll go into the ceasefire. After we were, both Thiago and I and others were interrogated, and they selected us based upon, I guess, experience, and since I was owner of the Honda and so forth, even though I'm not a member of the steering committee, the people that interviewed me at the end, very at the end, no longer were trying to get information. They knew they were getting nothing from me, and they wanted to figure out what the solution would be. Because they first asked me, "Are there going to be other boats?" I said, "Of course." And of course, they know there's another flotilla in our wake. But I said there are going to be thousands of more boats probably, and by land and by sea we'll be coordinating. They said, "Yes, that's what we're afraid of." Look, what can we do? I said, well, why don't you allow us to deliver the food directly? Because you did offer, the government offered to go to Ascalon port, unload our humanitarian aid, and the Israeli agents would take it. I said, how can we trust a government in full genocide, depriving people of food, to bring our food to the Gazan people? We can't trust that. And then the Italians also suggested, let's take it to Cyprus, and their Catholic agents will do that. We can't trust anybody, so let us deliver the food. And he said, but there's no port in Gaza. I said, no problem. We will anchor out. We will bring the food in by Gingy after you inspected it all and deliver it directly to the Gazan people. Then they always say, but Hamas is going to get a hold of it. And I said, look, even when you're in a demonstration, you cannot control people and get everybody. I organized a demonstration at Columbia checkpoint. There were 6,000 people. You didn't want to have any violence, but people are throwing rocks. You can't control them. Just like when you deliver food, you cannot control everybody, but the chances are most of the Gazan people on the shore, you can see that starving people on the shore, and the people are dehydrated, they need water and they need medication. You can give that to them directly. It's a necessary risk, and they said, that could be a future solution to these boats. We can all anchor out, bring our stuff in, and then take off. So that's very new, Patrick, that they're even thinking of this. Now, the ceasefire, very briefly, I think probably about a minute or two left. Is that right?
Yep.
Ceasefire, very weak agreement. It was basically a hostage exchange deal. After that, you have two extremely weak points and others. Bringing on Tony Blair with his ignominious record as when he was a part of the quartet from, I think, 2007, 2015, complete failure with Palestine. And also he misled the British people about Iraq, has no credibility, but he's a friend of Trump. So Trump wants his cronies in, clearly weak. But the weakest thing of all, if you make an analogy between the Irish Sinn Féin and the militant groups that ended up working with the government, it's a different situation, but similar regional issues. And the original issue was so important for Ireland is all the militants were involved in negotiations. In this ceasefire deal, the Gaza and the Hamas, Islamic Jihad, all these actors in Gaza, they are out of the discussion. So they should be a part of it. And then finally, and so it makes it very weak because we have a deal that was signed by Egypt, by Qatar, by Turkey and the United States, it means what? And the last thing is simply a very weak allusion to, well, when all this is done, maybe we'll think about the possibility of Palestinian statehood. All this is so vague, and requiring Hamas to lay down arms without getting anything tangible is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let me see. We got a minute left. From an American point of view, Frank, from one American to the other, this is just abject humiliation to have our president have to go in front of an Israeli legislature and do a Dean Martin celebrity roast routine, considering everything that's going on, and not even bother mentioning the Palestinian state issue, not bother mentioning the genocide as if it didn't happen. Instead, he's cracking jokes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a really, Trump might think that he is lording it, but he's actually showing a total humiliation for the United States and the office of the presidency. Your final thoughts on Trump and where this is going, and we'll wrap it up. Go ahead.
Trump, he made his he made his tour of the Middle East. He's like an overgrown kid that's fishing for approval by his parents. He wants really people to think he's a hero, that he's doing something right. He's fishing for compliments, and unrealistic, completely saying the war is over, but he doesn't care. He simply wants people to applaud him like a big kid or a little kid that's insecure. And we saw that clearly, literally compromising any credibility he could ever have. And I think it's an ingredient. Him and this whole 20-point deal are ingredients for failure.
Yeah, it's well, we'll see what happens. Despite the victory lap, we'll see what really happens in the next couple of weeks. I am praying that this is a permanent ceasefire, as we all are, Frank. But by the same token, us in the media and if you as a human rights campaigner need to be vigilant, and you are, and we are vigilant as to the realities of who you're dealing with here. But again, our prayers with the Palestinian people, and thank you very much to you and the crew. We salute your efforts, and it has made an impact, and we hope that it's going to lead to more positive things down the road. It's one stone in the lake, but the ripple effects will continue, and if necessary, there will be more flotillas, I'm sure. But Frank Romano, thank you so much for joining us on the Midweek Wire.
Thank you, Patrick, and we'll have more. But I'm hopeful too. I really, out of all that, I'm very hopeful that this will be permanent, and then we could work on reconstruction and bring Palestine could be one state and live a normal life.
No, you're not alone there. Thank you, Dr. Frank Romano. There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. We'll continue this conversation in future programs. And again, thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate everything, including your support for this program. And we will be back on Sunday with the Sunday Wire with another live broadcast. Check out 21stcenturywire.com. And please, if you consider supporting this media platform, we need your help now more than ever. We have various options there on the donate page, or subscribe and become a member at 21wire.tv. All options there. At our website, upper corner there, you'll see the gold button. It says donate here. Different options we can cater for, including crypto, if that's your thing. But that's all we've got time for. A tremendous conversation, again, with our guest, Frank Romano. We'll be back with more Sunday and next midweek as well. So things are really heating up on a number of different fronts, and we're going to be there with news and analysis and for you guys as well. So again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you very soon. And in the meantime, we'll go in the outro with we won't do any music this time. So it's going to be a hard break, but take care, everybody. All the best.